Hey, brother.
Hey, Al.
And welcome everyone back to another episode of Siblings in Crime. I'm Allie Rosso.
And I'm Blake Murphy.
And just as it sounds, we are siblings who love true crime.
Yes, love it.
Okay, obviously Blake is chomping on some chomps, so...
It is chomps.
Yeah, I know, I can tell. That's funny. Well, also, Blake is in California, if it's not super obvious. So it might be a little less quality. Hopefully it's not. Hopefully I can figure it out. But the show must go on.
We aren't stopping.
Heck no.
We're leaving.
And as always, if you haven't yet, please like, subscribe, repost, all the above. Be nice. I'm lame. I look at comments and I shouldn't. But the more the merrier. More, please.
More.
Means the world to us.
Yes.
Well, Blake, before we get in, anything you'd like to share with the class?
I'm in California and it's beautiful and I'm just enjoying my life. So that's it.
Very nice. Well, I'm happy for you. I'm progressively getting less and less comfortable every single day. So I'm glad that things are going good for you.
Ooh,
things are fine for me,
sucks.
though. I'm very grateful.
Yeah,
Grateful regardless.
True that.
Well, let me get right into it because this case is biggie. We got a lot going on.
Biggie Smalls.
Yep. Biggie Smalls. So, that being said, this story starts on the 13th floor of a hotel in New York City. It's the middle of the night, late November 1953. Two men, co-workers, are sharing a room. Twin beds, nightstand between them, blackout curtain pulled over the one window. Both of them, it turns out, work for the CIA. One is a bacteriologist. The other was sent along just to keep an eye on him. Somewhere around 2:30 in the morning, that window breaks, and 13 floors down on the sidewalk of 7th Ave, a man lay dead. The story the hotel gets, the story the family gets, everyone gets, is simple. He's been under a lot of stress, he had a breakdown, and jumped. The story holds up for 22 years, but the question remains, is this explanation as simple as it seems? And this is the case of Frank Olson. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's roll. All right, so we're starting at the hotel right across from Penn Station in Manhattan, November 28th, 1953. Frank Olson is sharing a room on the 13th floor with a fellow CIA worker named Robert Lashbrook. According to Lashbrook's own account, which is crazy, he says that he wakes to the sound of Frank running across the room and Frank going straight through the window, curtain, shade, the glass, all of it goes straight through, falling to his death. Downstairs, the hotel staff hear it before they really understand what's going on. They hear like this big crash. They hear obviously something hitting the sidewalk. The night manager runs outside and finds a man on 7th Ave still alive, but like barely. And evidently, according to his report, he is trying to mumble something, but he passes before any medical personnel get to the scene.
Wow.
How terrifying. Like what a weird account too from Lashbrook. So of course when the police get there, the police and the manager, they book it upstairs to go see what's going on from this room.
Yeah, and from what I remember, the Lashbrook guy is just like kind of chilling on the toilet. Like so weird.
Yeah.
Like not like freaking
So
out,
weird.
calling the police. He's just, I don't know, maybe he's freaking out on the toilet, but like, why is he not trying to like do something?
Right. No, yeah, exactly. And that's what's weird is, of course, the cops aren't on the scene immediately like the manager would be. So you imagine there's a few extra minutes for the cops
Maybe
to get
15
there. By the
minutes.
time, yeah, and I obviously I don't have the exact time, but by the time they get up to the room, enough time has passed where this is a pretty big deal. If you witness that, most people are running downstairs, like seeing if their friend's okay, running to get
Calling the
authority,
cops,
anything.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and this guy's sitting on the pot. That is
Yeah, so
wild to
weird.
me. That
Yeah,
is a
that's like
weird
a
behavior
huge red flag.
to me as well.
CIA
And
sketchy.
then, yeah, the night manager gives his own account of this room. In his statement, he's like, I have never seen anything like this. Like, obviously, no one has, but he's like, a man getting up in a dark room in the middle of the night, sprinting at a closed window, not hitting any furniture on the way, and just busting through. That is obviously very odd behavior and also kind of difficult to do. I mean,
Yeah. Aren't those I'm pretty sure they're like double pane, like super hard glass to break, especially trying to run through it. Like you need to like break it open before you could probably like run through it.
that's what I would think. Obviously, this is the 50s. I'm not sure if hotels were made differently. I mean, I would doubt that it would be like thin glass. Like that's going to be a liability on the hotel.
Yeah.
So like that had to have been some serious force to get through.
Seriously. And then there was also like a phone call, right? Like a
Yeah,
sketchy phone call.
which is weird because like at the time we have like a switchboard operator. So obviously
Yeah.
phones are working a little bit different these days.
Yeah. Back in the old
And
days.
yeah, exactly. The hotel switchboard operator overhears like the roommate, Lashbrook, say something like, "Well, he's gone" on the phone. And then another man on the line says, "Well, that's too bad." That's a weird interaction. Like different retellings identify the voice differently. Some say it was Dr. Harold Abramson, which we'll get into these people soon. And then also, like, he was a doctor who had been treating Frank. And then the other like sources say that they think it was Sidney Gottlieb. And as we know,
Both
different
sketchy guys
retellings
because they're part of the CIA.
potentially potentially. We'll get into both of them. Neither identification is locked down, so it's kind of more speculation, but the exchange itself is well documented. Like we know that this conversation happened, we don't know who it was with, basically. So, of course, police are going to interview Lashbrook right then that night. And he tells them that Frank has been dealing with ulcers and work stress and like really highlighting all the tall tale signs of a man in distress. So, of
Hmm.
course, like that's a bad look for Frank. Officers right away rule it a suicide.
Yeah.
So, the dead man's name, like we mentioned, is Frank Olson. So, we're going to talk about who this guy is. Frank was born in 1910 in Hurley, Wisconsin, to Swedish immigrant parents. He was like a small town kid. He did well in school. He ended up getting his PhD in bacteriology from the University of Wisconsin in 1938. And he also married a classmate, Alice, and they started a family. So he had to be a smart guy. PhD. Like, I
Yeah.
wonder how you get into bacteriology. That's
I
such a
know. It's like,
random
yeah, like
specific.
who would want to be like, ooh, I want to do that. I want to do that. Like, it's like the most weird thing ever. But I'm sure like after graduating, World War II is starting, and like
Mhm.
Frank's skill of that of bacteriology is something interesting to the
Mhm.
CIA because I know that other countries wanted to start doing more. What's it called? Bio weapons type of things, and
Mhm.
I think the CIA wanted to jump on that as well.
Yeah, and like yeah, like World War II starting like literally the year after he graduated, like
Yeah.
1939. So of course, like he has a very niche skill set. They're gonna hop on that. And
Hmm.
in 1942, his old thesis advisor actually recruited him into a brand new program. So this becomes Fort Detrick in Frederick, Maryland, the country's secret biological weapons laboratory, basically.
Really fast. Something kind of interesting is I don't know if this part is when he was joining the CIA, but like colleges were like a hotbed of like CIA recruiting, and a lot of professors were CIA agents, basically, or whatever they're called, like recruiting like their brightest students to the CIA. That's how
Oh,
like
wow.
John Kiriakou got recruited and other people. But I believe it's they're not allowed to do that anymore. So
I actually didn't know that that was the thing. So probably this advisor was already obviously involved in the
CIA.
CIA.
Yeah.
And I imagine that, especially during like the early 19s, like 1900 to the end of World War II, all the world wars are going on. So you have
Yeah.
like these guys getting very invested in some very smart people. And Frank obviously is one of those really bright people. So
Yes.
officially, he's like a civilian scientist. That's what they're known as. Unofficially, he's doing aerobiology research, which I'm sure would be fascinating. So he's learning all of how germs travel through the air. And like you're mentioning, they're looking for like how to do bioweapons. And this is like the program that Americans really didn't know what was going on. It's kind of going on behind closed doors.
Yeah.
But Frank is like hardcore into this world. He's involved in field tests where they're releasing things like bacterial agents to study how a cloud of pathogens would travel. So like any like all those like tiny living agents that can cause diseases, he wants to know how they can get distributed. Freaky.
So freaky.
Yeah. So they even did this in places like San Francisco, which is wild that they actually but at the,
And it's
well,
like, what other thing is crazy is like you said, they're doing it in places like San Francisco and the US, and I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to um like harm or like invade US citizens' privacy, and the CIA and other like government agencies continue to like get in trouble for doing that. But I mean, this is back in the day before we heard of all these scandals that come out of the CIA. So,
true. And like evidently this they used like a bacteria that they believed was harmless. It was kind of just like a replacement to see like what a real attack could look like. And so according
yeah.
to them, they're like, we're not doing any harm. This doesn't invade any privacy. This doesn't do anything to the citizens. But like you said, we find out later that just a lot of sketchy things is going on this time when they're trying to get ahead of all the other countries for war weapons, etc.
Yeah.
So that's kind of freaky if you think about it. And like Frank actually rises to acting chief of something called the Special Operations Division of Dietrich. That's like as classified as you can get. Like you're like in a classified building already, and he's like the classified of the classified. So
Yeah.
he is in the know.
Yeah. He's top
Kind of a
dog.
dangerous place to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything with like the CIA, I think is kind of dangerous to be in.
Right.
But
And which is crazy because he's like kind of just known to be the scientist. Like he's publicly called an army scientist, but as we know later, like even his family knows that it's kind of like a cover up. Like that's what his like title is. But as we know, he actually officially joined the CIA himself. And this line of work did not seem to be everything he thought it would. On paper, we had this like golden boy career. He was respected in his field, a great marriage, 3 kids, nice house, basically all the things you would dream of growing up. And that changed over time. Obviously, this wasn't some office job. His family wouldn't even know to what extent he was involved. But
yeah.
I don't
I
know.
mean, I mean, this is like the headquarters of the America's offensive biological weapon program. So like
Right.
that's insane.
Which is so
It's like where they're
freaky.
building germs into weapons. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's crazy.
And this is going on because then we also have the Cold War going on. And so they're like, the United States and the Soviet Union are both like running programs to like try and figure out all the like bioweapons. But
Yeah. It kind of seems
evidently,
like that's what happens a lot in the US. It's like all these agencies are trying to beat other countries to certain things like
hmm
nuclear weapon to the moon to bioweapons, and it's like we're trying to beat them out so we don't get it used on us first and potentially use it on them, or basically have it where we have it, you have it. If we don't use it, you don't use it, and then it can be a little more peaceful. But it's kind of crazy
yeah,
how
you have a
that works.
standoff.
Yeah,
That's what's freaky is like evidently neither side used this ever in outright warfare or combat battles, but it sounds like every side wanted to be prepared in case somebody comes swinging with it. So the countries just want to be in the know. And Frank found himself right in the middle of this stuff. So that's like intense. All the wars are going on. He's learning like some serious things about weapons. And this is like kind of when things shift for him. Because early of 1953, Frank actually decides to step down from the leadership post at Dietrich. And the reason he gives is stress. It totally makes sense. His ulcers are acting up, his job is getting to him. And then that
Ulcers just
summer,
sound
he
so
takes.
gross.
Yeah, what is that? Like, it
I
sounds
don't
so
know.
weird. I don't even know what
I've
that
heard
is.
about it so much. I just don't know what it is, and it grosses me out. I think it's something in your
Well, maybe it
stomach,
won't be
but I don't
grossed out
know.
if we knew. Look
Yeah.
it up right now because we're so uneducated, it's painful. But obviously, if he's getting ulcers from stress, he's got to be like max stress level. And it only gets worse because that summer he takes an overseas trip. And by every account, everyone that knows him, this is when things really start to go downhill for
Ready
Frank.
for it? Is
I'm
it
ready.
an open sore that forms on the internal and external lining of the body? So yeah, very gross.
Hmm.
When it happens in the stomach or in the or the upper small intestine, it is called a peptic ulcer. It happens when harsh digestive acids damage the protective lining.
Hmm.
So,
So his body is taking the hit for his stress.
yep, that's what happens.
That's so sad. Well, it only gets worse because when like he travels through England, France, Sweden, Germany, and specifically Germany is the part that really affects him the most. He spends time around a place called Camp King outside Frankfurt. Have you ever heard of that? This was new to me.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, me neither. I guess it's a US interrogation center. So we actually have an account of what he told someone about it. Even it's like secondhand account and it's years after the fact. So memories can be off. But according to one of his coworkers and close friends, his name's Norman Cornoyer. I'm gonna go with just Norman. This is his account in 2001. So he actually sat down with Frank's, yeah, something like that. He sat down with Frank's son, Eric, in 2001 and described what Frank had come home saying about this European trip in 1953. As Norman remembered it, Frank had a tough time with there was like drugs, torture, brainwashing. Norman said that Frank felt ashamed about what he witnessed, that what he saw at Camp King reminded him of what had been done to people in concentration camps. That's sickening.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously, like I said, memory and recall 48 years later can be a factor for sure. So, this is not like a quote from Frank himself, but if this is just true, I can absolutely see why he's having severe distress, thinking, I'm involved in this government and I work for these people and I'm seeing horrible things.
Yeah.
That makes me
Yeah.
sad.
Seriously.
So, Camp King around this time even had a doctor cycling through named Kurt Blom. Have you ever heard of that guy?
Yes. Kurt.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he is actually a Nazi doctor. He
Yeah.
would run chemical and biological weapons experiments on concentration camp prisoners during the Holocaust. So he's a war criminal. And
Yeah.
I don't know if this is with him, but a lot of people, a lot of the scientists in like Nazi Germany escaped to different countries because the other countries wanted to use their intelligence to help themselves. And so, like, a lot of the really bad Nazi criminals didn't really get in trouble because they just started working for other countries. It's just insane.
Which is so creepy that we're like, yeah, let's take you and work with you, you know?
Yeah, a lot came
And
to the U.S. and
right.
Argentina and other countries like that. But
True. He actually didn't like just run away and make an escape. He was actually tried at Nuremberg for it.
okay, that's
However,
good.
he was acquitted for it. So, after his acquittal, that's when the US brought him over anyway through a program called Operation Paperclip, specifically so people like Sidney Gottlieb, who we will get more into, could use the information that this doctor knew. Some accounts say Frank may have personally witnessed Kurt conducting interrogation experiments at Camp King, though the detail is iffy even in the source reporting of it, so maybe treat it as a maybe. So when Frank comes home saying he witnessed torture and drugs and brainwashing and all this, like this is the world he's living in, and a literal like convicted then acquitted war criminal working for the same government Frank works for, doing research adjacent to Frank's own fields, had him losing his mind. And on top of that, he had also been convinced that the United States had used biological weapons during the Korean War, which had just
Yep.
ended that July. So this part of the Korean War thing is genuinely disputed. Um, it's like not proven at all. And unlike the Camp King material, nobody has ever really pinned down what convinced Frank of this, that the United States was involved in that at all. But whether it's true or not, the people around Frank agree on one thing, that he came home from this European trip a completely different guy. He was quieter, he was depressed. His family noticed immediately. Right when he arrived, they're like, something's off, something happened. And I imagine that's the trauma. If you're like, it would be, I'd be depressed if I felt like I was involved in something just like pure evil all of a sudden. You're seeing this and you're like, wait,
Yeah.
this is what I'm working on. Ah, that would be tough.
It would be
But
very
anyways,
tough.
yeah. And 3 months after he gets back is November of 1953. And this is when Frank goes to a work retreat. And that retreat is when everything changes. But before we get into that, I kind of want to take a second. Like you're kind of leading into the MK Ultra. I don't know a ton about it, but I do know it's like the CIA's mind control research program, I guess. And it officially kicked off in April of 1953 under CIA Director Alan Dulles. It runs or it's run day to day by a chemist named Sidney Gottlieb. And we talked about Sidney a few times, so he's going to come up a whole lot more now that we're talking MK Ultra. So tell me
Yeah.
like what you know about it.
Yeah. So kind of like what you were saying, MK Ultra kicks off in April of 1953 and runs to about 1973. And so it was right in the middle of the Cold War. And like we were talked about, the CIA was scared that the Soviets and the Chinese had already figured out mind control, especially on like American prisoners of war when they came home from Korea. They seemed brainwashed. And so the CIA wanted to figure out like how they could also do the same things. And so they started testing this using LSD and other drugs to try to like hypnotize and just basically like control the minds of the different people that they were using it on. And a lot of these people were American citizens. And so, like, for example, one of the American citizens they used this on was, what's his name? Ted Kaczynski, who ended up being the, I think, Unabomber or something.
No
Like,
way.
it messed with a lot of people's brains. Let me see.
That's so scary.
Yeah.
And a lot of these times, like these people had no idea that this is the treatment they were getting, right?
Yeah, no one knew. It was all like it was it was super, like they didn't know that it was happening. There was even a place or a thing they called Operation Midnight Climax,
Hmm.
and the CIA set up like safe houses in San Francisco and New York and had like sex workers on payroll and would lure men into the houses and dose them with LSD without consent, and the agents would watch what
Ugh,
would happen to see like how the effects of LSD on their brains during sexual things too. It's just
that's
basically they made like
disturbing.
people like they're like they made people like their test subjects. Something else crazy. I don't know if I should get into this, but basically when the whole thing blew up, um, the CIA director Richard Helms ordered that the CIA agents destroy all the records because the Congress wanted to like go through them and basically just like destroy them for doing all this stuff. And so the CIA destroyed everything except for a couple like financial documents. So we don't know the whole extent to MK Ultra, but we know some things. So it's just kind of scary how much more we could have learned if they didn't destroy all those things.
Right. And that's so freaky because you're only going to destroy things that you know is going to be like a problem if it's found out about. Like they
Yeah,
had to have a conscious that these things are horrible because they're getting rid of all the evidence. It's
yeah,
sickening.
yeah. So basically, it's terrible and a huge black eye to the CIA. And I think it's probably the start of when a lot of people started always questioning the government and the CIA
Mm.
because what they've been told isn't actually what's happening, and they've been doing things that were considered illegal.
Yeah, that should definitely be considered illegal.
Yeah.
And that's what's tough is like the CIA is top dog, where a lot of the times they're not going to be held accountable for doing things that are atrocious. Like
Yeah.
even Gottlieb, like the Cindy Gottlieb guy, he was like so interested in this. He literally had like the CIA buy up basically the entire available supply of LSD. He literally got the
Jeez.
nickname Poisoner in Chief.
Yeah.
Isn't that freaky?
Yeah, and it's crazy too because I feel like scientists a lot of times, like really crazy ones like this, like like don't have a conscience, and like they just want to figure out the science
Hmm.
to do whatever they're going to do, no matter the cause, no matter the harm that it could cause. But it's kind of crazy, like, so it kind of goes hand in hand with like the CIA. Like CIA just wants to figure
Hmm.
out how to do whatever they need to do no matter what the cost is, and same as like some scientists as well. But anyways.
Yeah, it's almost like they're leaning into the logical side. Like we need to find answers and facts, and they take out any of the emotion, the empathy, sympathy, any like human emotions that need to be removed in order
Yeah.
to do this to another human being.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
I know there's one guy. I don't think he's ever been named, but it was like documented by New York Times that he got dosed continuously for 174 days. Like
Yeah,
that is
jeez.
so freaky. He was a patient, like they think almost certainly he was a patient
In the
at the
mental hospital.
addiction research center actually here. Um it was one of the main sites where MK Ultra money like flowed like through for drug testing. But like you're saying, like a lot of people who were drugged were like prisoners, mental patients, drug addicts, all that. But then even regular guys were lured in from like different, like you're saying, sex workers and stuff. So
Yeah.
even colleagues were lured in. So it's
Hmm.
so freaky because no one was safe at this time. Like it could be anyone that's getting tested, and they wanted a wide variety in order to see like what happens to different types of people. So
Yeah.
disturbing.
Yeah, and it's so sad too because a lot of those patients never got the full function back and never learned how to like do any, like they were kind of like brain dead almost.
I
So,
know that's what's freaky is because there's this like psychiatrist. His name's Donald Ewan Cameron, I believe. But
hmm,
he would have patients who were like coming in for normal things like insomnia, anxiety, and he's putting them in drug induced comas for weeks on end with a recorded message over and over, basically trying to like rebuild a new personality or like add one on top. And like you
that's
said, like
crazy.
people who go through this, they're not getting their regular function back. Like
Hmm.
they're never using language the same again. It That's so scary, and to think that there's people who were willing to be involved in this is wild. And I think that's why it shows Frank, like that just proves that Frank had a moral compass. Like if he's like I got to get out
Slightly.
of this, like this is freaky. Well, he does enough to try, he's like trying to leave once he's seen what's going on. Cuz this
Yeah.
program is the like descendant of earlier ones. It previously was Project Bluebird, Project Artichoke. Frank actually sat in on the committee connected to Artichoke back in 1952, so he had been involved quite a bit. So he was some outsider to it. He was always there even before MK Ultra got its name. But
Yeah.
just freaky. And like you said earlier, Richard Helms, he like destroyed all those documents. I think it was actually like you were saying, a few documents were saved. I think it was like by accident. That was like a
Hmm.
clerical
Some
mix up.
financial documents.
Yeah, and that's the only reason we know any of this. So I cannot imagine what else was destroyed. But even Gottlieb himself, he testified to Congress years later that when you added it all up, the money, the risk, the results, it was in his own words, he said, it probably not a high payoff program. I'm like, probably not a high payout program. Easy to say after the fact. Like that's pretty that's pretty harsh. You know, like we did all this and not much reward. Very nonchalant for somebody who's literally stripping people of their lives in such an extreme way. So I bring all that up because I want you to understand the scale of what Frank Olson was involved in. This wasn't just like he happened to be involved like at for a one-time event. This was a 20-year government-funded, actively covered up program, and he happened to be the working scientist inside of this as everything's going wrong. So let's so this all kind of leads up to the so-called jump, if you will.
Mhm.
So November 18th through the 20th in 1953, Sidney Gottlieb organizes a retreat at a cabin at Deer Creek Lake out in rural Maryland for a group of CIA and Army chemical and bio people. So this included Frank, of course. It's kind of just like billed as a work meeting and it's nonchalant. Except for the fact on the evening of November 19th, around 7:30 or so, Gottlieb and his deputy spiked the group's after dinner drinks with LSD without telling them. So
Yeah,
now this is involved in the colleagues. They're unaware of what's going on. So Frank's drinking a beverage, unknowingly spiked. Horrible.
crazy. And especially like it's crazy that he's using it on the people who were like testing. You know what I mean?
He's like one of
Like on their
them.
own colleagues, yeah. And I kind of
Yeah.
wonder if like they spiked him with an extra amount because they wanted him to go crazy. But anyways, keep going.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so this isn't like disputed anywhere. Like this is like hardcore facts. It's in the CIA's own records, which
Yeah,
is like what freaks me out the most. But like you're saying, like I don't even know what the purpose would be. I don't know if it's like they just want to run an experiment, kind of like a truth serum type of thing. I don't know what the reason being is cuz Frank wasn't the only one that was drugged, but it seems pretty diabolical that they're going to this extent. So the next morning, Frank goes home to Frederick, a completely different person once again. So when he came home from the Europe trip, he was like depressed. He was like very uncomfortable with what he saw. But now when he comes home from this retreat, he's a totally different type of different. He won't eat dinner with the family. He's distant. He's shaken. And at some point, he tells his wife, Alice, that he's made a terrible mistake.
creepy.
Yeah. He never gets around to say what the mistake was. He never really got the chance to. Over the next few days, he's clearly deteriorating. His supervisor, a man named Vincent Ruwet, he later gives a written statement saying that Frank came back to work very agitated, he was disoriented, basically not himself at all. On top of that, Frank actually asked Vincent, like point blank at work, he's like, hey, should I quit or should you fire me? And he's like, obviously looking for a way out. And in that same statement on record, Vincent told Frank, evidently, that his conduct has been, quote, beyond reproach. So basically, Frank, a guy having a full psychological break, is asking to leave, asking to get out of this work. And the answer he gets back is, you done nothing wrong. You're staying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even really know how you fire someone like who has so much information. I feel like they kind of probably just had to keep the person around no matter what because if they fire him then it's like he might go to spread some things. I mean, I'm sure that he would get, put on trial and locked up for discussing secrets, but still it's like it's crazy like how much he knows, like they probably are worried to like let him go,
True.
but I don't know. Probably not a
Yeah.
normal 2 week notice.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is do you think that it's like months process, like they fade him out where he doesn't know the most recent stuff, or I don't know what that process would be. If anyone knows, let us know because surely they're not like, oh yeah, you have like the most confidential information in your brain, and you're allowed to just like go and start working at Home Depot if you wanted.
Yeah, I'm sure though, like if he did say something, it would just be like they throw him in jail for espionage or for whatever it's called, treason, and he would
Mm-hmm.
never see the light of day again. So
That's
I'm
true.
sure
So scare
people
him
they can get
straight.
fired. Yeah, because people have
That's
gone to
fair.
jail for that. So
Which is yeah, what being a whistleblower is a dangerous thing to be. Well, that's like kind of his situation. On November 24th, Frank leaves work suddenly before noon. And according to family accounts, he tells his wife that they're afraid I might hurt you. Like, he literally says that to his wife. And because of this, like, obviously things are messed up in his mind right now. He actually agrees to get psychiatric help. On that same day, instead of, like, I don't know, maybe taking him to a doctor down the street, which seems like the right thing to do, the decision is made for him and he is flown to New York City. His boss goes with him, so does Robert Lashbrook, the man from the beginning, the one who shares the hotel room with him for a few days. Obviously, Frank's mentally unwell right now. Could he just be depressed from his line of work? Is he just like getting regularly drugged by his boss? Whatever the reason, he is clearly disturbed, according to everyone who knew him, and he needs some serious medical intervention. So the plan, allegedly, is to get treatment. So he and Lashbrook see a doctor named Harold Abramson, and that's who we talked about in the beginning, who he might have been on the phone call with Lashbrook, might have not been. We don't know for sure. But worth noting, he is not a psychiatrist, like not the doctor they should be seeing. He's actually an allergist. But he's also someone with a documented relationship to the CIA's drug research. So, of course, they trust this man. So, this is the man that they take Frank to come see and get help from. Over these final days, the accounts describe Frank getting worse. He's paranoid. He's fixated on the idea that he's being followed, that he's failing. And then something terrible is coming. That's what he keeps getting this like doomed, depressed emotions. By some accounts, at one point during this time frame, people around him actually discuss whether he needs to be hospitalized. Like, that makes more sense. But again, they're like, no, we're just going to share a hotel with him and see how it goes. So they share the hotel room. On his last night, Dr. Abramson comes by the hotel and gives Frank a dose of, I don't even know how to say this, Nembutal. I don't know if I'm saying that
Sounds right.
medicine. Sure. But it's a sedative, basically. He gives him a sedative along with a glass of bourbon,
That's what they
which is
say they give him. You know what
true.
I mean?
But also, if you're treating a man in the middle of a psychiatric crisis, it still seems like a strange combination, even if that is supposed to be like not very harmful. Seems obviously it is the 50s. Maybe they did things a little differently. But this is the combination they're giving this guy right before bedtime. And it just doesn't seem like a normal combination to most people.
And then the unthinkable happens,
Yeah,
and the official story is that he gets up and jumps out of the window from a mental breakdown. But
exactly. So that's what the family is told, right? They don't know about the LSD part. Nobody even knows about that at this point. They're told that Frank had a nervous breakdown from work stress. He either fell or took it, which fell is a weird description. You gotta like get going pretty fast probably to get through a glass window.
I
Or
looked it up, by the way.
the double
It
glass pane or something.
says, yeah, it says standard 1953 hotel windows used regularly. Uh, I don't know, some kind of plated glass rather than heavy duty modern tempered or laminated security glass. While thick glass, basically, it's actually much more brittle and easy to shatter into dangerous
Hmm.
shards than modern tempered glass.
Okay, that makes more sense. Because when I picture a hotel, I'm like, they're doing everything to not let you out that hotel room. But that makes sense more in the 50s that it's possible. So that's good to keep in mind. Nice looking that up. But but the family's even told at this time, like when he passes, that the body's too disfigured to view, which later turns out wasn't true. Which Alice Frank, his wife, or sorry, Frank, Alice Olson, Frank's wife, is left to raise these three little kids and carry that story. But deep down, evidently, she's never believing that this has to be the whole story. And it's basically because she has no proof. Like, no one knows what's going on for these next 22 years. So that's where we're going. That is like the story that's given. He jump? He is mentally struggling, potentially drugged. And like you said, I guess it's easier to go through a window than I thought, which would make more sense towards this story. Well, June 11th comes in 1975. So 20 years have passed. The Washington Post runs a story tied to the Rockefeller Commission CIA investigation. And they say an unnamed Army employee secretly dosed with LSD by the CIA died falling from a hotel window. Now, remember, the family doesn't know that he was like dosed with LSD and stuff, but all the other details were so familiar the Olsen family knows immediately that this is their guy. Like, this is the dad, this is their husband. Every detail lines up. So the family actually ends up holding their own press conference, and they're like, "Hey, that story that the Washington Post posted, that's our Frank. That's Frank Olson." And they bring their own tragedy into life, or into light. And that response is almost immediately responded with President Ford coming forward and personally apologizing to Alice and the kids in the Oval Office. So
Mm,
5 days later, CIA Director William Colby even has them for lunch and apologizes again, handing them what he calls the complete CIA file of Frank's case. It's kind of
definitely
weird to
not
me,
the
though.
complete file.
Definitely not the complete file for sure. And it's weird because like 20 years have passed. They have not said anything about Frank's case. And then the family brings this to light, and the president immediately brings them in and apologizes. That
Mm,
is very odd behavior. And obviously, it seems like he's trying to prevent this story from making further progress in the media, in my
yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, and another thing too is they get that settlement, and then in the agreement they can't, sue or, get any more information, so it's like they have to accept what is said rather than, a full-on investigation, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Well, that's what's a bummer is like it's nice because yes, Congress did approve of a settlement, and they landed on about like $750,000 at the time, which
Yeah.
is probably a few million now, which is like nice for the family, I'm sure, get some extra support in that way. But it's weird because now case closed, you can't dive into it further, and the apology in the settlement covered the drugging. That's what it says like on the documents on the paper, but the CIA, they do not admit to any involvement in how he actually died. So it's like a partial confession. Like, hey, sorry we drugged him, that we did do that. But also separately unrelated, he happened to go through a window. We don't know anything about
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
That's like that's like their apology. And this was not good enough for Frank's son, Eric,
Hmm.
who at this point is a Harvard trained clinical psychologist. And he basically spends the rest of his adult life trying to figure out his dad's case. He's like,
Wow.
there are so many fishy things. And so he takes a deep dive into it, especially when the 90s come around.
Yeah. So, like in 1994, he arranges to have his father's body exhumed, right? To like move
Yeah.
next to his mom or something.
Yeah, which is crazy because like when I first heard about this, I thought it was for forensic reasons.
Yeah.
Originally, the plan was just to move Frank
Move.
to,
And
yeah,
and it's like, hey, while the body's out, let's figure this thing out.
yeah. So they're like, you know what? We're getting a second autopsy, and that's when they bring in their lead guy, James Stars,
Yeah. And
and this
it's
is
like
what they
probably
find.
another 20 years later where I'm sure the science of like autopsies and everything is a lot more advanced than it was in 1976 or 1953.
Hmm. I was actually wondering this because I'm like, how different would an autopsy be like 40 plus years later? Obviously, the body's not going to be in the same condition.
Hmm.
But they kind of touch on this with James Starr's report. The original, like 1953 report says that Frank had multiple cuts and abrasions all over his body, consistently, presumably, with going through glass. Like, right, that checks out.
Hmm.
But when Starr's team looks at it, he was like, okay, actually, we're not seeing any of that. No
Yeah.
lacerations consistent with the original report. In fact, regarding lacerations, he said, nary a one.
Nary a one.
Yeah, nary a one laceration. So I was like, I
So that
trust
means
this
not
guy with that
one.
verbiage.
I want to look this
Yeah.
up.
Yeah,
Keep going.
not a single laceration. But they find something the first autopsy never mentioned at all. So in this second go around, they find a fist sized hematoma, which is like a deep bruise essentially, on the left side of Frank's head, and significant chest trauma, plus a skull with so many fractures. Starr said that they couldn't have come from a fall alone, even from hitting pavement 13 floors, like from 13 floors.
Interesting.
Which I'm like, that's so crazy that you have to be so educated with like the different types of traumas. Like the fact that he knows that that wouldn't come from that type of fall is disturbing, but okay, that's his job. But
Also, like you were
stars,
saying
oh,
before, it's like it's crazy that they can even get this stuff from a 40-year-old dead body.
I know. And yeah, so I guess like the Washington Post specifically noted that the body was very well preserved. Like preserved enough that glass cuts actually should still be visible, which I'm like, what kind of preservation is this? That's crazy.
Well, maybe
S-
because it's like up north, like
like really cold
it
ground and stuff.
yeah, the ground freezes and then like by the time summer comes, it's like cooling off, but then it freezes again. It's like you're 6 feet deep or whatever, so it's like probably cooler in there too, and
True.
there's probably some factors to it. But anyways, kind of
Yeah, I cuz I
weird.
was thinking about the same thing. I'm like, is this that big of a factor? I try to look it up a little bit and it seems like it doesn't affect the second autopsy as much as I personally would think. If anyone has more intel, I would love to know because I'm very curious. But from what we could find, it seems like the second autopsy is just as valid as the first in a lot of ways. Because Stars, like who like again is a professional forensic scientist, he's like not a conspiracy guy. Like he's not trying to be on the conspiracy bus. But
Yeah.
in his own memo to Manhattan DA's office, he says that the evidence is, quote, wrinkly and starkly suggestive of homicide. So he doesn't say it's proven to be homicide. He doesn't make that bold of a claim. And even at least one of his team members, if not a few, do disagree with the homicide read. But like our main forensic guy is very unsure of it actually being a fault. So, of course, the team kind of has some disagreements, but we do know that there are markings that indicate or that are on his body 40 years later that were not even in the first autopsy findings. So that's kind of suspicious.
That is very suspicious. Also, I know that officers at the scene that night reportedly noted that this wasn't the first time a man connected to the intelligence agencies had gone out falling out of a high window under odd circumstances. So that's also
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, I think like it was like a few years earlier, maybe like 5 years or so. The
Yeah.
UN economist, yeah, is that who you're talking about? His name's
Hmm.
Lawrence Duggan, I believe. He was suspected being a Soviet source, and he died that like almost the exact same way. I couldn't track the exact documents around this. I have heard that as well. So that's like kind of another thing that may or may not have been for sure the exact same circumstances. But either way, seems a little odd. And
Hmm.
it doesn't sit right with Eric. He takes these new forensic findings to the Manhattan DA's office in 1996, and they actually reopen it as a cold case. But it unfortunately it was never enough to bring to a grand jury. There was no charges ever, and you can't really do much when things have already been settled. So
Exactly. Kind of what I was saying before.
mhm. Yeah, like they want to sue
Hmm.
again, but because of the settlement in 1976, it just doesn't go anywhere, which has
Yeah.
to be frustrating for them. I know they want to open it to solve it, not for money, so that would be discouraging. But oddly enough, they do take it to court. I mean, that part's not odd, but the odd thing is that the judge that was on this, his name's James Boasberg, while dismissing it, he wrote his opinion that he said, quote, the skeptical reader may wish to know that the public record supports many of the allegations that follow, far-fetched as they may sound. So like the federal judge on record is basically saying like, hey, I have to throw this out, but I don't think y'all are that crazy.
Yeah.
He's
It's
like,
like
I don't think that's wild.
yeah, he's like, if I could do something about this, I think we should, but I can't. So I just want
Exactly.
everyone to know that it is weird.
Yeah, which is like saying a lot from a federal judge. You're like, oh, so you think that there's some weight to what Eric's bringing to this. And so that brings like a couple different theories, of course, which none are proven. But Eric Olson's own conclusion being that he thinks his father was actually murdered by the CIA specifically to stop him from disclosing what he believes about American biological weapons used in Korea and about the inhumane interrogation and execution practices he witnessed overseas. Eric is dead set on this, and I don't think that's crazy.
I agree.
What's even crazier that he brings to light, which I hadn't heard about until I was studying this, is that I guess there's like a real declassified document from the CIA manual called A Study of Assassination.
Oh, I heard about this.
You have heard about that?
Yeah,
That's
keep
so new.
going.
That's so freaky. So Eric pointed to language in it that describes the most efficient method as, quote, a fall of 75 feet or more onto a hard surface, with a note that the subject may need to be stunned or drugged first, and that care is required to ensure that no wound or condition not attributable to the fall is discernible after death. Which is freaky that this isn't a CIA assassination manual. And if you
And
lay
it's
it
like
side
by
by
the book.
side, yeah.
Like they brought in that like the doctor brought in some medicine. I forget what it was called, but it was basically to relax him,
Yep. The
knocks
sedative.
him out, they kill him, throw him out of the window. Just like
Which
it shows in the in the manual,
manual?
basically.
I'm like, how is there a manual of assassination? That is so creepy. Yeah, putting these side by side, it seems pretty co- a coincidence does not seem to really
Yeah.
fit.
Doesn't seem like a coincidence at all.
I feel the same way. So people, of course, over the years have opinions, and one of them is a journalist, Seymour Hirsch, who is like a very reliable journalist, very respected in his field. He says on camera that I believe he was killed. I have reason to believe he was killed, but I can't prove it. He goes on to describe Frank as a man who was profoundly, profoundly distressed about what he was learning, and he was dangerous, which is interesting. He, according to Seymour, he evidently knows more about this, but he can't say why because he can't put a source in danger, which is a bummer. And I get that. Like, he's a reliable reporter, but I know you can't just take anyone's word for it. But I would be curious to know, like, what makes him say that and who his source was. But
Yeah.
that's just me being greedy.
Yeah, same. And I feel like that's like their sources, journalist sources are like the most important, asset. So
Hmm.
like they can only give,
So
certain
much.
amount of information, and then they can't out their source because then their source would never give them anything else, and other sources would never give them anything else until that person has
Right.
permission to, tell what the source told them or whatever. But
So he gets all the details because he seems to be he keeps to his word of keeping his
yeah,
sources
it
under
makes me
wraps.
want to be a journalist so I can hear all this stuff.
I know. I'm like, can you guys just tell me everything?
Just
It's
tell
so
me. I promise
fascinating.
I won't tell anyone.
I know. I don't even know your name. But that's what's interesting is so that's his take, and then we have two different historians that kind of say completely different things. We have one guy, his name's Michael, and his take is that Alan Dulles and Richard Helms, the CIA's top officials at the time, ordered Frank's death because he knew too much. And that's kind of what we've been talking about this whole time. Is like,
And
could he have just walked away, or are they like he's in the confidential realm? Like we need to get rid of him.
yeah, I feel like they messed up like giving him LSD and made him crazy, kind of. And they're like, all right, so now he might just start doing stuff because he's crazy too, or like in some kind of crazy like state. So they felt like they had to get rid of him.
Which is so
But
sad because like
Richard
he was
Helms just
only
sounds
drugged.
sketchy as ever. Like destroying all those documents and stuff. It's like he like willingly went against Congress's order not to destroy anything, and then like
Do
I
we
don't
know
know.
if anything happened to him? Like, was he held accountable for destroying all these documents?
Probably not, but I'll look. You keep going.
Yeah, figure that out because I didn't go into the details, but yeah, he rubs me wrong. But what's interesting is only a month after like the story in Michael, he a month later, the New York like Post or whatever it is, the magazine, they actually had a different historian, Milton Littenberg, who had a whole different take. He said that there is no evidence that the US ever used biological weapons in Korea at all, and that there was no biological warfare carried out by any agency of the US government during the Korean War
Sounds
or
like a
for
CIA plant.
yeah, or for what like for that matter anybody else. So he leans to like Frank was not on to anything. Like there's nothing to have been too involved in. And so he leans, it sounds like, to the suicide like idea.
Interesting.
But
Well,
that
it
so that's
said
like
that.
oh good.
Sorry, I was say Richard Helms was never disciplined, fired, or criminally charged for ordering the destruction of the Project MK Ultra's files in 1973. While he did order the bulk of the mind control program's documents shredded shortly before leaving office, The action did not result in professional or legal discipline for that
Wow.
specific act.
That's crazy to me.
I know.
Wow. So yeah, so we have two different historians saying completely different things. We also have people just who have their own opinion. So here's what actually sits. All these decades later, everyone agrees Frank Olson was secretly drugged by his own government 9 days before he died. Everyone agrees that the family was lied to for over 20 years. And everyone agrees that the second autopsy found injuries, the first one somehow missed. So, what nobody agrees on is whether this was a man broken by an experiment who took his own life, like in a psychotic state, or if he was severely depressed because of the information he had and took his own life, or if it's a man who was thrown out the window because he knew too much and was trying to get out. So, all the implications terrifying. There isn't a version where the government looks clean either, which is bummer. But so, like, what happened?
It sounds like to me potentially that it was both. It was he was distraught about all this and he knew too much, and like they drugged him and they were worried that after drugging him, like they saw his response to being drugged and that he was getting even more like like he wasn't very, they couldn't predict what he was gonna do, so they had to
Mm.
like get rid of him. That's what kind of seems like to me. I don't know why they drugged him. Honestly, I don't get that. Maybe they're
That part
trying to
is.
control his actions by dosing him with LSD to like mind control, like what they were
Mhm.
practicing, and it didn't work, and it made it worse. I don't know, but
That's the only thing I can think is why they would have drugged him is if they are trying to do like the whole brain control. And he's already been openly expressing he's trying to leave. So maybe they were like trying to get him to forget about certain things before he left. I'm not sure. Do you think that so say the CIA is guilty, say that they got rid of him. Do you think that it's because of just what he knows about what's going on with interrogations and the torture in that sense? Or do you think that he even knew more because he claims that the US was using biological weapons in Korea and like those type of things? Do you think any that has any weight, or it's mainly just the projects that Frank himself was working on?
probably both. I don't know. I feel like he knew too much and he knew things that weren't talked about yet. So
Mm-hmm.
something like that, but I'm not exactly sure. What do you think?
I don't know, cause I mean, I don't think there's been any evidence of the US doing that for the Korean War. Um, so I think that I wouldn't put it past the CIA to do this to a person who just had information on the projects he was working on. Nothing like more than that. So, whether the Korea thing happened or not, I think that it it looks I don't know. I think the second autopsy gets me thinking that the CIA did potentially harmed him in the room before he fell to his death. But at the same time, if you're whacked out on drugs, like he could have done that to himself. Like he
Yeah.
could have ran and done that if he like I think maybe if anything, he was mistreated and the situation was mishandled and it was neglect at the least. At the most, I think that they did like harmed him and then intentionally threw him out.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
Either way, it's freaky. I hate it all. It's so sad. Like no one should go through any of this type of stuff. And I'm glad that MK Ultra has, from what we know, been dismantled.
I
But we
know.
never know what's going on
Could
behind
just be
closed doors.
another project's name, just like it
Yep.
was used to be Artichoke and
And
whatever the
Bluebird.
other one. Yeah, Bluebird, and now it's Red Roof or something.
Yeah.
But
So we don't know exactly what happened. So everything here is allegedly with our own opinions, but the facts remain that it is suspicious and it looks bad, and that is the case of Frank Olson.
crazy one. But I
It's
think all
freaky.
these things with the CIA is crazy. But
It fascinates me though. Like
me
I
too.
will go through people's podcasts just to find the ones that say like CIA something. I'm like, that's crazy.
I know that's why I like John Kiriakou so much. He like
Mm-hmm.
kind of lived it. He got in trouble for whistleblowing, or he was a whistleblower, and they said it was he was telling agency secrets. They tried to put him in jail forever, or the death penalty, and he got like 3 years because everything he said was true and against the law. And yeah, so the agency, like, if you're on their bad side, they'll do anything they can to sink you, it sounds like. But
so scary.
Yeah.
Well, what's your keyword for today?
The Unabomber.
Unabomber. That's like a very niche.
Ted Kaczynski was part of this.
That is true.
Which is crazy.
That is so freaky. Yeah, don't do drugs because you could become a bomber.
Yeah.
And all the other reasons not to do drugs.
Yep.
But, Oswald, do you have any true crime news for us?
I do not.
Okay. Well, in that case, thanks for everyone for tuning in. We'll be back next week with another episode of Siblings in Crime.
Bye.
Bye.